I think my juices flow all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know as much as I know.
Right now, we've been able to stuff the stuff.
The curse is broken. NC State fans, finally. Finally.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving.
I mean, that's a triple play.
The Wolfpack ain't for soft. It ain't for soft people.
We finally did it. We made it to the start of the college football season. Welcome to Law of the Wolf. I'm your host, Joe Giglio. Joining me this week is going to be former Wolfpack kicker Austin Herbert. Austin kicked for NC State from 2000 to 2003. You might remember they had a somewhat famous, legendary quarterback for those 4 seasons. Have some great stories with Austin to go over this week. But first, we'd like to get into some football for this season. And one of the main reasons I have Austin on this week is to talk about kicking. Because I think one of the things we're kind of overlooking for NC State this season is the loss of Chris Dunn. After 5 years, Chris Dunn had a record-setting career, won the Lou Groza Award last year for the Wolfpack, actually won a couple of games for NC State with his field goal kicking. I think that's going to be difficult. And I know they added Braden Narveson in the transfer portal. I do think that is good to get an experienced kicker. I hope all things work out there, but it's tough. I mentioned Phillip Rivers. Replacing somebody like that was tough. Replacing Dunn, who, like I said, owns every career and season record now for NC State kicking there is. That's going to be tough, especially if you remember the earlier days under Dave Doran. So Thursday night, NC State goes to Connecticut. They'll play 7:30 at East Hartford. UConn, after 1 year of Jim Mora, is a different team than the one that we saw here in Raleigh last year. Last year, State won 41-10. Scored on the very first play of the game. Deep shot to Thayer Thomas. Kind of set the tone for the whole night. State wins a laugher 41-10. Well, UConn turned around. They beat a good Fresno team that year. They also turned around and beat Boston College, who NC State could not, to finish their regular season at 6-6 and reach a bowl game under Mora. Huge accomplishment for UConn, who's now an independent in football. So I expect there to be some excitement by the Huskies on Thursday night. I expect them to fight, certainly more than the 31-point gap that we saw last year. Line for this game is 15 points. Seems a little high. Might even be right on the number. I could see State winning by 2 scores, but not sure they're going to cover that 15. It's going to be difficult for them. I do expect NC State to win, but my biggest question for NC State this year is not about Braden Narveson, is not about the defense, which I think will be fine under Tony Gibson, even though they lost a lot of production from last year's team. Having Peyton Wilson back certainly helps. Aiden White, All-American from last year, certainly helps. Shouts to one, since we're interviewing one Cary legend on this program, shouts to another now. Davin Van gets the number 1 jersey, defensive end, well-deserved. If you don't know, in the Dave Doran tenure here, he's turned the number 1 jersey into an honor as a team leader. And we've seen Isaiah Moore wear it. We've seen Jalen Samuels wear it. Now we will see Van wear it this season. So I'm not worried about the defense. I'm not worried about quarterback Brennan Armstrong, who was off last year at Virginia. Off meaning his production was down. Virginia had a terrible year. That happens. And his entire offensive line was overturned. There was a whole new coaching staff. That happens. He struggled. His production fell off a cliff, and I get it. There's reasons for that. That's not to absolve Armstrong for all of it. Certainly, anytime you're still playing, you can do something about your situation. But I do expect Armstrong now in his 6th year and reunited with offensive coordinator Robert Anae to be just fine, even better than league average. I think he's going to have a fine year. My concern, though, is with Anae and Dave Doran. And in this sense, I say concern. We've now have 10 years of data with Dave, who was a defensive assistant. That's where he cut his teeth before getting the Northern Illinois job in 2010. Okay. So you're looking at a guy who came from the defensive side, was at Wisconsin, where he was kind of made his name before getting that Northern Illinois job and helping Northern Illinois get to the Orange Bowl in 2012. So you're talking about a guy who's probably inclined to, as we've seen, run the football, and play defense and maybe be a little bit conservative. He's had 3 different offensive coordinators in his 10 seasons. And I wrote about this for Saturday Road. If you're not familiar with Saturday Road, shouts to my man, Chris Wright. He used to be one of my editors at the News and Observer. I've started writing for him this year. I'll do a weekly NC State take, a weekly ACC take for Chris. Happy to be working with Brett Friedlander, who regularly covers the Triangle teams for Chris on Saturday Road. So check that out. I appreciate you guys following along and reading along. As you know, for 24 years, that's how I made first 24 years of my career. That's how I made my living as a writer. So check that out, SaturdayRoad.com. And what I wrote about this week for the opener is I want to see what Dave Doeren lets Robert Anae do. And by that, I mean, there has been an identity for NC State to be, and for Dave Doeren, given his background, to be slightly conservative, to try to run the ball and try to win with his defense. Special teams, obviously, with Dunn, was a huge bonus. So my question is going to be, how will Doeren let Anae operate? If you look, here's a chart that I'll post for you. If you look in his first 3 years, we had Matt Canada. This was a team, first year, fine, we'll throw it out. 14, totally balanced, 204 yards per game on the ground, 204 in the air, 30 points per game. Not bad. 15, you had the year where Jay Sam had the clean jersey and no one else was everyone else was dirty from the Mississippi State bowl game. Matt Canada was told thanks, but no thanks. It's not me, it's you. And he ends up going to Maryland or Pitt, one of the two. And now Eli Drinkwitz comes in for the 3 years with Ryan Finley. You see a passing offense that peaks in 2018 with 313 passing yards per game. That was 8th in the FBS, 8th in the country. So that was a high water mark under Dave Doeren. Then Tim Beck for 3 years. Well, we had Des Kitchings, who was actually Brendan Armstrong's offensive coordinator last year at Virginia for 1 year. Then we had Tim Beck for 3 years. And I thought Beck did a really good job his first 2 years in particular. I thought he inherited a situation after 19 where State was 4-8, and they really needed some new ideas. And I think he got them there. I thought last year was a real struggle in terms of predictability, in terms of complacency, in terms of a lot of their pass routes and pass combinations were sending a guy on the outside, maybe Thayer, maybe Devin Carter, and saying, hey, go beat your guy. And I think we've advanced and past that a little bit. And that's where I want to see what Doran's going to let Robert Anae do as a play caller. So that's the real question for me heading into this season. What will Anae do? How will he help Brendan Armstrong kind of get back to his form from the 2021 season? How will he use the playmakers that, didn't exactly flash in the spring? Keon Lassane, I do expect to be one of those veteran players who has a really good year. I think Trent Penix, if he could stay healthy, is a gadget, change of pace kind of guy who we've seen Anae use in his past. I think that will help. But ultimately, the receivers are the ones that are going to have to step up. And Anthony Smith, a Terrell Timmons, Juice Farine, a young guy who's a tight end but has some size. Bradley Rosner, that got transferred from Rice, who had 10 touchdowns last year, but is a skinny guy, but is very athletic. So it'd be interesting to see how some of those bigger targets develop. Another one that we've seen from now day one in the starting lineup is Kevin Concepcion in the slot. And they have big designs and plans for Concepcion. I think he is going to have an outstanding season. The question is, again, what will Dave let Anae do? And I think the dynamic there is different, obviously, than Matt Canada that first 3 years, different from Drinkwitz, who was younger at the time. Remember Des Kitchings, that was a co-coordinator situation. If you don't remember, with George McDonald, but Des was the one actually calling the plays. It was a too many cooks in the kitchen type deal. And then Tim Beck, like I said, 2 of the 3 years, outstanding. Last year, difficult circumstances with 4 different quarterbacks, but a struggle nonetheless. So Anae's background, if you don't know, was with Bronco Mendenhall at BYU and then Virginia. Mendenhall then decided to abruptly kind of retire. Nobody knew what was going on. He retires, left Virginia in a bit of a lurch, and then Anae ends up at Syracuse last year. And I think one of the things that really impressed Dave was playing against Syracuse and trying to scheme for Robert Anae, trying to prepare for Robert Anae. And I think that's the kind of thing as a defensive coach, that can help you. You're like, hey, now who have we played against that gave us fits? And I think if he keeps that mindset, I think this offense is going to be just fine. So let me give you a score prediction before we get into this conversation with Austin Herbert. Let's go. They scored 41 last year. Let's go 27-14. I think State wins. I don't think they cover. I'm going 27-14 on Thursday night. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. Usually my radar is pretty good, usually in these situations too. If you don't know, with Dave Doran, when his teams play teams from the group of five, they usually win. They usually have more talent. It's usually a situation that sets up well for them. As long as UConn doesn't pull a UMass on us and have 15 Power 5 transfers and a super secret Clemson sleeper agent playing quarterback, I think State wins this game. I think their defense shows that too. I think it's a 27-14 Wolfpack win. Now, let's take a quick break, and then we'll get into that conversation with Austin Herbert. Appreciate everyone for checking us out this week. Check us out all season long, Apple, Spotify, Google, you name it. Or if you're on the YouTubes, hit that subscribe right there. Let me find the camera. Hit that subscribe right there. Appreciate you guys. And of course, when we rate, it's positive vibes only, 5 stars only. We have a new sponsor for college football season. I'm ecstatic to welcome Wings Over Raleigh. Wings Over Raleigh, right there on Hillsborough Street, right across from University Towers. Ryan Malley. Learn the name, learn the place. I put you on those steak and cheese sandwiches. I put you on the best pizza in Raleigh. This is the spot. Wings Over. Go check them out at wingsover.com. Football season equals wings season. You can't have one without the other. Get all of your tailgate needs. Heck, if it's just a Monday night game and you're trying to watch the game without trying to go out to dinner or anything else, you just want to eat some wings and watch a game, Wings Over is your spot. Wings Over Raleigh, right there on Hillsborough Street, 2900, right across from University Towers. Even better, order that food online. Ryan Malley's crew has got you. They're going to take care of you. Get the sweet chili wings. That's my official recommendation. Welcome to the OG. Welcome to Law of the Wolf, to Wings Over Raleigh. Welcome them by going and checking them out at wingsover.com. From our newest sponsor to our oldest sponsor, or should I say the OG, Hayes Lancaster Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority. Year 3 for an NC State podcast for me. Year 3 for that support from Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority. Hayes Lancaster, you'll see him there in the RV lot. There's a reason. His business, they know what they're doing. You trying to get rid of those bugs inside the house? Got it. Outside the house? Got it. Maybe you got mice in the attic? Get rid of those too. Underneath the house, though, take a look. You don't want mold. You don't want mildew. That 360 moisture barrier, game changer. Go check them out at bugsbite.com. Learn all of the services that they have at Mosquito Authority and Pest Authority. Tell them the Law of the Wolf sent you. Joining me now on the Heaster Automotive Group hotline in person.
Hey.
Austin Herbert, Cary legend for sure.
I don't know about legend.
Mortgage legend for sure. Wolfpack legend.
Wolfpack.
Austin Herbert. So Joe Giglio was in the studio before, and he was like, "What years were you at NC State?" And I'm like, "He was there." You know, some people refer to them as the Phillip Rivers years.
That's all I say. Yeah, the years don't matter, but the Rivers, anybody can resonate with the Rivers era.
But for those of us even that have tangential imp blood in us, they're not the Phillip Rivers years.
Ooh.
They're the Austin Herbert years.
Oh, whoa now. Yeah.
It's 2000.
Kicker punter, nobody remembers that guy.
Oh, come on, man. You got to be one of the last to do it. Definitely at State, you're the last to do it, but I'm saying Power 5, there can't be that many kicker punters running around.
There's not a lot of us. Yeah. It's a weird deal to swing legs both ways, you know? Punt, a little different.
So you punted all 4 years for NC State, 0-0 to 03. Yes, they just so happen to overlap with a certain legendary quarterback. You kicked 2 of those years too, which is the purpose I have for you on this podcast this week. That's why I wanted you to join me here on the Law of the Wolf.
NC State getting ready to open up the season against UConn. It is the first time since 2017 that Chris Dunn will not be the kicker for NC State.
That's right. That's right.
Chris had a 5-year run. He was the Lou Groza Award winner last year, missed only one field goal attempt. I give him almost sole credit for the Florida State win last season. He was amazing in that game. And I think when people start thinking about, well, what's different between 2022 and 2023 for NC State, or what's going to be different, I should say. I think of Chris, and I'm curious, as someone who kicked there, as someone who obviously still pays attention to NC State, as someone who understands the pressure of kicking as well. I'm curious your take on how State can replace someone like Chris, and what's it going to take to replace Chris Dunn.
Yeah. Well, first, Joe, thanks for having me on. Big fan of the show. So glad to be here.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you coming downtown. Appreciate you putting up all my technical difficulties. I mean, it's a thing. When Ovis is not here, it's definitely a thing.
Yeah, might have taken us an hour or so, but hey, here we are. We're live.
Who's counting?
So, man, I'll tell you what, big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
Braden Narvison. Braden's got, thankfully, some years under his belt. He's got some.
Not coming in cold, not a true
exactly
freshman,
right.
Western Kentucky transfer. So that there's that. He has some experience. But as you'll probably tell me, there's a difference between kicking at Cary High in front of 1,000 people and kicking at Carter Finley Stadium with 58,000 people.
That's a big difference.
Or Death Valley with 80,000 people, or Campbell Stadium with 80,000 people, and cameras on, and all those other good things. So, big shoes to fill. What would you like to see out of Narvison this year?
I just want to see some early success. We got a new guy in, get meshing with his snapper and holder, see some good consistent quick operation. Not at risk of getting kicks blocked, and if he can get some clean kicks off against UConn and hopefully against Notre Dame too, we can start the season on a strong point and continue on early success, because that's what's key. It's a mental game for kickers all day, every day. There's all kinds of factors, and those factors, when you're in front of 58,000 roaring fans, any little slight hesitation you've got mentally is going to show full force. So early success is key.
Yeah, sticking with Chris, I never thought of him as like having the biggest leg in the history of the world, but maybe the confidence perhaps was the key to his success.
Poise, man. You could just see it in him in his form from warm up through follow through. He's out there. His pre-kick routine was the same thing every single time, and he had respect of his teammates, which to me is an indication he was a off the field leader too, of sorts, as much as a kicker can be. So yeah, poised, confidence. He was full package, and hopefully he's gonna make a run here if he gets on a team with his NFL career going. His leg strength, though, that's the big thing.
Yeah.
I mean, in college, man, he's epic. He's just a legend, and NC State will forever hold plenty of records.
If you're Chris and you have all of the records that he has, I think you still take the onside kick against Carolina from 21, though, right, as the career highlight?
Yeah, all day, man.
I mean,
he recovered his own.
His own, and it was they don't win the game without that.
Everybody loves to hate on a kicker until
I was gonna say
until you make a game saving or a game winning kick.
Were you someone who wanted the coach to talk to you before a kick? Were you someone who wanted your holder to talk to you, or maybe Danny Young, your long snapper, to talk to you? What was your approach before you went out there and kicked? Did you just want to be left alone?
No. I was not the most poised of kickers, man. I was always in the game, ripping, roaring, screaming. I'm still adrenaline junkie, but man, my head was in the game the whole time. I was on the sideline just screaming and yelling and all about it. So if my guys try to leave me alone before a kick, that would mess with me. Did it help for you, though, that you punted too, so that you were involved in the game? You weren't just on the field for those, 4 snaps a game? Definitely. Yeah. The more you're on the field, the more fresh you are, fluid you are, and you're in the game. You're more time you spend on the sideline, you get cold and play mind tricks with yourself. So for me as a kicker punter, it was all about being there with teammates, being in the game and in the moment. And again, that might have been my downfall. That's why my kicking only lasted 2 instead of 4 years. I missed a few extra points, missed some field goals. I stuck to punting because the intensity level of punting, it was getting the ball as high and as far downfield as you could. It was a big deal. Kicking's a different animal now.
When you say respect from your teammates, I don't want to paint a negative picture of specialists, because it's been a minute since I actually played football, and it was only at the high school level. And of course, at high school, it's usually the quarterback or someone who handles the kicking, right? So of course we respect that person. The number of college football practices I've been to, though, over the years now, it's been a few. The specialists are usually by themselves.
That's right. Yeah.
Usually, and as they should be working on what's going on. But I could see how, a Terrence Holt might be going through all of the paces and look over there and be like, what the hell is Herbert up to? Those kickers. So, so how did you find a way? Because you mentioned the respect that Chris had.
Yep.
How did you find a way to try to convince your teammates, hey, man, I'm over here working too, I promise. Because you don't want me to screw up catching this snap. You don't want me to shank this punt. I don't need to be over there running 110s with you. I need to be over here figuring this thing out.
It was running those 110s.
That's how you got there?
It was had nothing to do with the position. It had to do with busting your ass just alongside everybody else. You may not be as strong, may not be as quick, but your effort level's there. They see that speaks worlds, right? And that's where respect comes from off season.
NC State does have a long line of good kickers, and I think that got lost at the beginning of Dave's tenure. You were with Kiker, the kicker, who I enjoyed tremendously. Stephen Hauschka, Mike Kofer. So there have been some guys come through here, but I think in that desert portion of Dave's, the first 6 years of his tenure, you're going, was it hard for you to see what had happened to that position where you're like, man? And I'm sure you had empathy too. I'm not trying to single anybody out, because it was more than just one guy. It was like 3 or 4 guys in a row where you're like, man, they just can't seem to make the layups here.
I've seen both sides of it myself. Been on a roll, been confident and can't miss kind of mentality, and also been and seem like you're forever trying to shake bad habits kind of mentality. And so when we had a little downtime there with rotating through kickers and trying to find our groove, man, that's part of the game, finding the right guy. And the tough part is if a guy who's on the struggle bus can quickly turn it around and can go to a hot streak. It's just that's the thing about us kickers. There's how strong you are, how fast you are. The measurables really just don't matter as much for a kicker. It's about who's going to show up on game day.
How long did it take you to mentally square that in that business, in the kicking business, you're going to have failures, and that you're going to have to handle those failures, even if it is in a game determining situation? Because I'm guessing in high school, you had some moments where you miss, and you're like, it's hard to handle that, because you were a big deal in high school, for those who don't remember.
At what point do you accept the fact that you're not always going to make every kick? Man, I never did.
Really?
Hell no.
Okay.
No. I mean, you want to be the best every time you're out there, and you're not going to blame it on a bad snap, bad hold. If it's a windy day, it don't matter. It's all about the scoreboard. Scoreboard's what counts. And I hung up my kicking, punting cleats. Nobody's thrilled with the end of their career, right?
Right.
What, 0.001 come off with a Super Bowl win and then retire? That don't happen. So, naturally, as any competitive position you're in, you want to be the best every time you're out there. You don't want to see failure. So, at no point is it acceptable that you're going to have good days and bad days. You want to have good days all the time. That's why it's the mentality of an athlete.
All right, I want to go down memory lane.
Oh boy,
I have a couple questions for you.
All right.
But first, I need to pay a few bills, so we'll do a little advertising magic as we speak. When we come back, I won't make you do the Chuck Amato imitation. But I definitely need a Chuck Amato story. I feel like I need an Olin Hannum story too, because people may or may not remember the Cowboy who was Phillips' backup there at the end of his career.
That's right.
He became a little bit of a cult hero, Olin Hannum.
Rightfully so.
I definitely want to get into that too. And maybe even a recruiting story if we want to get back to the Austin Herbert origin story too, because I feel like there might be something there as well. So we'll take this break. We'll come right back with Austin Herbert.
You're selling a house. If you're buying a house, I've got the answer for you. Protect the value of your most important investment. Go to Hometown Realty. It's myhtr.com. Barry Woodard and his crew, more than 250 agents, 6 locations. Also, shout out to Barry and HTR sponsoring the water bottles at Garner football games. Look, man, there's no detail that's too small for Hometown Realty. All right. So go check them out. myhtr.com. They're going to take care of all of your real estate needs. If you're trying to rent a place, they got you. You got commercial needs, they've got you. Hometown Realty. Check them out. Again, it's myhtr.com. And then, of course, once you buy a house, you're going to need some help closing on that house. And who do you need to call? Yes, I can hear you saying it through the speakers. Whitaker and Hamer, WH.lawyer. Josh Whitaker, big State fan. I know. I didn't think it was possible for State to have lawyers, but they do. Josh Whitaker, Joe Hamer, more than 20 years experience. They have all of the G's covered. They have all of the offices that you're looking for. Goldsboro, Gastonia, Garner, you name it, Raleigh, they're there. Check them out at the world's greatest URL, wh.lawyer. Whether you're closing on a house, maybe you're not you need to sell a business, maybe you got some family law issues. Well, give Josh and Joe, check them out at wh.lawyer. And you'll see them at some football games too this year. So give me a shout. Tell them, hey, man, heard the ad on Law of the Wolf. Love it. Thank you for supporting all of our OG podcasts.
Everyone loves a good origin story. And we're here, Law of the Wolf. If you haven't followed or downloaded or subscribed or done any of those things, if you're on YouTube, like right there, it's not that hard. Just click on the subscribe button there. Apple, Spotify, Google's, you name it, we're there. Of course, positive vibes only. 5 stars only when we're doing our rating, because this is the Law of the Wolf. It's the real pack therapy. Do not accept any substitutions. No one will accept a substitution from the Cary legend, Austin Herbert. All right, so let's do the origin story first before we get into some of our favorite memories from the NC State 00 through 03s, a.k.a. the Austin Herbert years, never mind the Phillip Rivers years. So we'll get into some of those stories, but so you're at Cary. All right.
Go Imps, baby.
Yes, you're at Cary. And I said you were kind of a big deal. You were. Like, I remember the recruiting battle, because while you ended up at NC State and while you're repping the Wolfpack to this day, that wasn't where you originally had committed or thought you were going to play your college football.
That's right, man. Triangle guy. I actually had I'll tell you, my recruiting story was wild. For a kicker, of any sort to be recruited by Division I teams is I was blessed, lucky. I don't know, lots of luck, because I ended up getting offers from silly places. I guess I had some good showings, but there must be somebody behind the scenes pulling some strings, because it really got silly in the end there, like my junior year ago into senior year. But I wanted to stay local. My family's here, and I actually had committed to Carolina.
Yeah.
Forgive me, please. I had committed to Carolina. Carl Torbush somehow, almost got the best of me. Then he got fired, and I withdrew my commitment to NC. So I was back on even grounds. Was talking to Clemson, and I was actually heading down to Clemson for a official visit, and this was January. I know this because Florida State had just won the national championship, and then so they announced Chuck Amato is coming to Raleigh. Well, I get a phone call. I'm just about out of town, heading down to Clemson, and it's no other than Chuck. Herbert, this is Chuck Amato. I want you to come down to Raleigh and see me. So made the trip on my way to Clemson and talked to Chuck for a few minutes, and man, he just painted this vision. I was, he had just signed this guy out of Alabama, was his number one recruit, and this guy, some tall, goofy white guy that apparently was a free safety and could throw the ball pretty well. Turned Phillip Rivers. So he just signed Rivers and was starting to take the world by storm, and said, "Yeah, I want you to come in and we had this kicker at Florida State, Sebastian Janikowski. He would drink beer and eat pizza, and he was All-American. Lou Groza took it all." I'm thinking, this is a coach who respects kickers. Let kickers do what they want to do. I'm like, I can dig this. So lo and behold, ended up signing with State. I still took the trip down to Clemson. That was a great time, and but my heart was in Raleigh, and the rest was history. Chuck. He had me at hello. Just a man with passion. And, you can tell a coach new to a program. They kind of got to stir and mix their own Kool-Aid and then start serving it. Well, there was no Kool-Aid, man. It was just all in from Chuck. He just lived, eat, breathe everything. Die NC State, and it showed. So from the start, and that passion, there's no way I was going anywhere else.
So you knew you would punt from the get-go. What were you thinking was going to happen? How you were going to play, and like how did it kind of turn out?
Yeah, so I was primarily known as a kicker.
Yeah.
But Kent Passingham was a rising senior, was a stud. He coming off a good year, and there was no need to take over him. He was fantastic.
That first year, okay.
Yeah, that's right. So that was my true freshman. I kicked off and punted. So man, did I quickly have to learn how to quickly catch a snap, situate that ball, get that punt off, because the difference between punting, I know this is a kicking show, but the difference between punting in high school versus college is about a half a second, and that half second is a 270-pound linebacker coming at you full steam, ready to steamroll you.
It's an eternity, is what you're saying.
That's exactly right. So
doesn't sound like it.
Smokes,
Maybe not on a podcast, but in punting, yes.
Man, that was an adjustment. So freshman year was walked straight in and started punting and handling kickoff duty. All
right, so you get there. Chuck's first year, you guys jump out the gate 4-0.
Right.
Rivers is something else from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go with when did you know that Phillip was the real deal?
Oh, in 2 days preseason.
Okay.
Man, Norm Chow had Rivers. He got him his from high school diploma to PhD in no time in college football. Quarterback. I remember him taking him onto our kicker field. Other side of the world. He had dummies on the ground, cones. He had nets situated everywhere. He was taking Rivers through ABCs, 1, 2, 3s. He was doing math, arithmetic, everything all at the same time, just getting his mind thinking 7-dimensional, not one-dimensional. Can you throw this ball into that net? Can you throw this ball into that net while you're jumping over cones, running through these test dummies, singing your ABCs, and doing math? And holy smokes, with that kind of coaching, I think that was a huge impact on Rivers early on. Gave him the confidence and really helped him operate at a much faster speed.
It's probably my favorite Phillip Rivers story is that Norm Chow called Mike Holmgren after that first camp and said, "Hey, I think this quarterback's pretty good, but he has this kind of sidearm, weird delivery.
We got to fix it."
And Norm's like, "Should I fix it?" And Mike Holmgren said, "Does it work?" And Norm's like, yeah. He goes, "Don't touch it. Don't touch it."
That weird, awkward delivery did him well too, man. Yeah, I mean that quick delivery meant the difference. Several times would have been sacked, but ended up getting off some clutch passes.
I think for you personally, I think I can remember the highlight of 0-0 for you is going to be a fake punt
Yeah, baby.
Where
That's
your
right.
touchdown, you could always tell Philip you had a higher career passer rating
Boom,
than he
that's
does.
right. That's right. My QB rating, baby.
One attempt, one touchdown, 81 yards to Adrian Wilson of all people.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. Yeah.
Against Florida
The
State.
house.
Let's not talk about the score of that game. But what do you remember from that first year? You guys go 8-4, beat Minnesota, big comeback in the Micron PC Bowl, beat Carolina for the first time in 7 years that year as well. Just some really good games that year. I'm just curious. 23 years later now, what still pops in your head when I ask you about
the excitement in that locker room, man. This was a whole new coaching staff coming in. They completely changed everything about the culture of the program. And man, you want to talk about a group of guys that were bought in, and in that locker room, just the intensity, the love for one another. Chuck just had a way. It's that Italian wear your heart on your sleeve, man. He'd cry in front of us. He'd laugh in front of us. He would just really get the guys to buy in. So that if I gotta take one takeaway from that season, it was just the brotherhood, the brotherhood that he created of bunch of guys, certainly not strangers because they'd been playing together. But,
sure.
Just you're one up in it when you're under Chuck's leadership.
Yeah.
That intensity level. So yeah, the how he turned things around and how quickly.
Also, not a lot was expected of that team because nobody knew who Philip was, not publicly anyway.
Right.
I remember Jose Laureano was supposed to be the quarterback. I remember that
Who's
name.
that? Right.
But so to start the way that you did, to beat Carolina the way that you did with Philip catching the touchdown and everything else that happened. And again, the bowl game was a spectacular comeback, big win.
Right.
So you come back the next year, then there is much expected.
That's right.
And lose to Bunning in Carolina in early at home in an ugly defensive game because your defense was starting to come up a little bit at that time. And Carolina had Peppers. He had some kind of game against you. Right. I mean, it was ridiculous. He's a Hall of Famer for a reason. That season, though, where do you think it might have? Because you beat Florida State that year.
Well, yeah,
down there, so maybe that's the one.
Tallahassee,
yeah,
and not raise some eyebrows. Yeah. That was when I learned state shit. Yeah,
I call it the law of the wolf. When you expect the most, you get the least. When you expect the least, you get the most.
That's right.
I mean, you lived it. You saw it. I
Sure
don't have to explain it to you.
Yeah.
What part of it was shitty? Just the expectations part of it, or just
that's right. Just the letdown. We believed going into every single game that we were unstoppable, and we got stopped. Right? It was just sobered us up and helped us learn to buckle down and not take anything for granted. Because freshman year, that 2000 season, man, everything went our way. Well, not everything, but
rainbows and lollipops. Yeah,
that's exactly right. It's not cupcakes and butterflies and rainbows and lollipops. That's right. You got to earn every inch on that football field, and that was 2001 season.
All right. Well, let's get to the highlights then, and let's do this thing. But first, we'll take one more commercial break, and we'll be right back to Law of the Wolf right after this.
You're looking for some great merch this college football season. You want to be decked out in the best NC State stuff you can find? I've got you covered. homefieldapparel.com. Get the best vintage NC State shirts, hoodies, hats, you name it. They have it. Even better, use the code OG23, get 15% off that first order. So go to homefieldapparel.com, go under the schools, click on NC State, get yourself a Pack Power t-shirt. Yeah, you remember those from 83. Get yourself the best merch there is, the most comfortable hoodies there are. They have them. homefieldapparel.com. And again, use that code OG23, get yourself 15% off. You'll be all set for that Notre Dame opener at Carter Finley Stadium. And while you're out at Carter Finley Stadium this season, you know who's there. Breeze through. That's right. Get yourself a tumbler. Lifetime refills of the tumbler. Are you kidding? All your sodas, coffee, $20. Get this. You'll be set all season. Maybe you got ice needs. Maybe you got hydration needs for the tailgate. Maybe you need beer. They got a beer cave there, right there. Edwards Mill, Trinity, right at Caddy Corner from PNC Arena, Carter Finley Stadium. You cannot miss it. You've already been there. Now you know they're big supporters of the OG. Now you know you go get that lifetime tumbler, right? Can't win. You got to win this one on the OG, but get yourself a tumbler. Get yourself all of your tailgate needs. Wherever you go this college football season, Breeze Through has you covered.
Happy this week. Football's back. Happy this week to have Austin Herbert, Cary legend, join us here on Law of the Wolf. Once again, if you're not following or subscribing or rating or download, do that right now. Get over there to Apple, Spotify, Google, you name it. We're there. And of course, 5 stars only. So, Austin, let's get to the highlights now because NC State's been playing football a really long time. And only one time in all of that really long time have they won double digits. And it was 2002. NC State goes 11-3. 11 wins, beat Notre Dame in the Gator Bowl. We're going to see Notre Dame. Those memories always come up when NC State and Notre Dame play. You're going to see them and highlights of that game for sure. Right? And we'll get a D'Antonio Burnett story, Thunder, right. Because Thunder's our guy, one of your former teammates.
On the field
yes.
Raleigh in a couple weeks.
That 03 year, so you have the 01, which was disappointing in the sense that, you had so many good things happen in 00. 7-5, you're losing the bowl game to Pitt. Come into that next year. Now you got Phillip in his third year, Jericho, Cary, and now everybody knows who he is. Right. Thunder going into his senior year, Terrence Holt going into his senior year.
Defense, man.
Yeah, the defense was really that Florida speed, and they could hit you. And Chuck was kind of hitting his stride there, recruiting wise, and really kind of building on some of that early success that you guys had from that 00 season. So let's do highlights, Giglio. Highlights. You start that season, guns blazing. What stands out? It's got to be the Clemson game, right?
Yeah, that's when TA hit his stride, man. Yeah, so Clemson game was huge.
38-6. That was a Thursday night game. That gets you to 9-0.
Yeah, we were on fire. We were on fire. That was probably top of the world. That was Thursday. Thursday night game
down there. Yeah, which doesn't happen very often in NC State history.
That's right.
Torrey Holt did it once, but doesn't happen very often. What do you remember just about running hot? And I always remember the Chuck Sopranos spoof at the start of I think it was the Georgia Tech game. But that start that year, the Texas Tech game, so much heat. I just remember how hot it was for that game.
That era, I just remember the off-field level excitement. 2000, 2001, there was some buzz, there was excitement.
The Murphy Center was opening. The stadium was changing.
Yep.
I mean, it was really modernizing.
Yeah. So really starting to catch on. We were kind of starting to catch on the national eye, and man, that Chuck the Chest Kool-Aid tastes better than ever. We were so bought in, and the more interviews than ever before. More, we were signing more autographs, and it was just a wild time.
Would have been nice to have NIL back then, even for the punter, right?
Yeah, would have been nice. Yeah, we had a lot more personality back there. Yeah, I probably could have turned some bucks from that. But hey, scholarship was fine and well.
Yeah.
But man, that was an exciting time. We believed more in ourselves. Nobody could stop us. Period. We walking into Clemson, they were top 10. They were no doubt supposed to beat us. And you got the final score there.
A 38-6.
That's right. You got the final score there.
A 38-6.
That's right.
Yeah. Actually, Phillip didn't play great in that game. That was more of a defensive and TA kind of game where you were like, oh, wait a second. State is not only really good, but it's not just the Phillip Rivers show.
Right. Yeah, a run game. That was, again, when TA broke out. I specifically remember he broke through, got in the secondary, and 2 linebackers knocked him out of the way, ran 40 yards downhill for a touchdown. That play was I'd say, breakout moment for him.
How should we remember TA's career? Because people can be split on TA.
Yeah, that's right. Rightfully so, man. Damn, he's such a good athlete, such a stud. Just didn't want to train, didn't want to put in the off hours, didn't want to, he could do anything he put his mind to, and I saw him do it. But ultimately he was a guy who had all the blessings in the world, and once he finally got challenged for the first time, and that was at his height of that was when he was NFL preseason. Right? When he was going through. That was really the first time he actually had to buckle down and make a decision on if he was going to stick with it or hit the road. I mean, TA, best damn running back I ever seen.
And played that year with a broken hand.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
tough as nails, man. Oh my gosh. Yeah, tough.
That's the part where I think people get a little confused
tough.
about TA.
That's right.
Oh, he fumbled, he did this, he did that. And it's like, buddy, put up huge numbers that year, and he wasn't even healthy. And it was not to mention he had a hip, he had a hammy, he had all kinds of. To your point, probably because you're not putting in the appropriate work in the offseason to be ready. But when you're touchdown anytime and you set all the records that he did in high school, things come easy to you.
That's exactly right.
Even his freshman year, you're like, oh, well, this is easy. What are you guys talking about? So you get to the Georgia Tech game. I don't mean to do this, but
got to.
Right? Like, is that the one, or do you think Maryland or Virginia? I barely remember the Virginia game, only because it was juxtaposed with the next year where it was Matt Schaub. Matt Schaub played on that team too, but the next year was this wild shootout, right? But the 2002 season was 14-9 up at their place.
Couldn't get it going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Maryland loss. But the Georgia Tech was the one that took the pin that took the air out of the room with that. It just seemed like you guys didn't recover until FSU at home.
But three quick losses that set us back badly.
Yeah. You guys should have won the ACC that year. I'm not breaking news to you, right?
Nope. Yeah.
I'm not being overly harsh as I've been accused of in the past.
Bring it. We own it. It's another sobering reality of college football. We got high and mighty on ourselves. We saw all kinds of success, and shit happened.
To recover, though, starting with the Florida State game at home, and to beat them to get to that 10th win.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was Notre Dame. And I know some people sometimes can be a little bit confused about who Notre Dame is and what their place is in college football. They haven't won the national championship since 1988. And I get that. But playing them in 2002, that year, and NC State and Notre Dame had never played before. It was the Gator Bowl. It was a New Year's Day game. It was a huge spotlight. For you guys to recover that way, beat FSU again, by the way. Because you became the first ACC team to beat FSU twice. Mm-hmm. Then you became the first time. Then you became the first team to beat them there. Then you became the first team to beat them 3 times. So don't want to diminish the value of that FSU win. It also turned out to be the 10th. It's only been done once in school history. So you're salvaging. And now all of a sudden you get to the bowl game and you got to feel like that's a cherry, pick, right?
Well, we had a bone to pick. Yeah. Vegas didn't believe in us. I don't know what the line was, but we were waxed. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, there was no chance NC State could what was their quarterback?
Carlisle. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was a stud, had some stud receivers, and lo and behold, old Thunder Dan came in first quarter.
Yes,
and
hit him
out on the goal line, man.
And they couldn't get a first down, and that was one of those dominant defensive performances.
We put people on notice that game. I mean, that was on the national stage. That was, like I said, New Year's Day bowl game. That was
against Notre Dame.
Exactly.
Regardless of whatever you think of them.
Right. And Wolfpack showed up that day. I was in punter. I punted one time that game.
In the district, I was going to say it's probably your favorite game, but you did the least in.
Rivers got it done.
Yeah.
The boys, offense was just pounding.
You kicked that year too.
Some.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Lots of kickoffs, some field goals. Yeah.
Was there one of your field goals? I know the favorite memory is the touchdown pass, but was there a field goal you kicked that year that stands out to you?
I'd say Texas Tech I think it was that year.
Yeah.
It was my longest career field goal. I think it was a 42-yarder. I believe it or not, never got in for a long kick back in high school. That was kind of my MO. But so hit 3 for 3 at Texas Tech was as a kicker my highlight.
Was there a difference in your mind kicking into the Murphy Center end or the back then the RBC Center end?
Yeah, man. So Murphy Center came up my sophomore year. So junior year was my first season. It definitely changed things. That whirlwind started showing up, and I always preferred kicking into where the scoreboard is now. They have those big old oversized speakers on that old building before, but always keep between those two speakers was the the MO down there. On the Murph side, though, man, you started getting some crosswind, and I bet you it's even more now because they've got the even more bleachers built up. That does make a difference. Everything makes a difference as a kicker. But yeah, kicking into the Murph was it was nice because you got a backdrop, so you can point out, hey, there's that guy in the red hat. That's what I'm aiming at, right? Didn't have that on the other side, but a little more action up in the air, a little more breeze going into the Murphy.
All right, now we get to the punting highlight of your career, the world famous punt fumble that Chuck called. It was a called play, right? At Ohio State, 03, the horseshoe.
Yep.
Down 10. I think you're either down 14 or 10, and he punts. I'm like, what is he doing? And then you get the punt fumble. You get the ball back, you score, you get that thing into overtime.
I'll tell you, from that Ohio State game, what sticks out for me, the punt fumble was an exciting one. This is me just selfishly as a kicker punter. One of the most memorable moments of that game, man. It was the first possession. They're AJ Hawk, that guy, linebacker. That was just a monster. Third down, he sacks Rivers on like the 3-yard line. This is inside the shoe, so the loudest part of that stadium. And the place is rocking. I get out on the field to punt. I'm standing in the back of the end zone. It is so loud, man. I see sound waves between me and my snapper, Danny Young. Like, I'm not seeing the ball. I'm just seeing it's like being on a jet runway. It was so incredibly loud of that place. And somehow got the snap, got the punt off. It was a decent punt. But, man, that to me is
triple overtime, 44-30. And I know you guys didn't win the game, but is it the most memorable game you played in?
No doubt.
Yeah.
We came
and they won the national
field,
championship the year before.
Exactly. Another moment we weren't expecting to do much. We carried them through the very end, and some would say we should have won. But anyhow.
I argue to this day, if Chuck had gone for 2 at the end of regulation, he would have been NC State's coach for 20 years.
Hell yeah.
Think about how people love Tom Osborne, and I know he got his, but it was even when he retired. You remember one time he went for 2 to try to win the national championship, and it was like
couldn't have blamed him. We were on the road at the end, had the opportunity, but look, we lose that game. We coming off the field into the locker room, it felt like we won. Of course, we didn't win.
Right.
We left it all on the field. Chuck comes in. We were kind of course down on yourself. Didn't win. He comes in after post-game interviews, and he's got this ear-to-ear grin. He's like, boys, y'all had that. Y'all almost won. And we went wild. I mean, it's wild to think that you can lose a game and still be that excited. But, man, that was Ohio State. Defending national champions. That was by far the best loss ever. Yeah, I mean, another moment to put the country on notice.
let's get out of here because I promised an Olin Hannum story.
Uh-huh.
Now, for those who don't remember, Olin Hannum was a backup. He was a junior college transfer.
Yeah.
Pretty sure he was from Wyoming
Hey,
or Montana.
Midwest, yeah, man, I couldn't even tell you.
One
It
of
was
those
foreign
two.
country.
And he was cowboy as cowboy gets,
Uh-huh,
right?
That's right.
And he never passed. And that 03 season, a lot of it after some of those losses became, all right, let's make sure Philip gets every potential record he could possibly set,
Yeah, that's right.
which he did. He set a handful of ACC and NCAA records. So we did not get to see a ton of Olin Hannum,
Mhm.
old number 19.
Saturday, man.
But when we did, he would do something interesting.
Always.
And he was a character. So there's got to be
Uh-huh.
an Olin Hannum story that you have for me.
Utility player galore, man. Yeah. He would do it all. But the story I'll tell you
Okay.
had nothing to do with football.
Okay.
Classic kicker punter thing. We're Bojangles on a Sunday after a game, and it's in the drive-through. Out walk a few ducks. Sure enough, guy's got his lasso in the trunk.
In the car.
In the
truck.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. He disappears, gets out of the car, and we're just ripping it up in the car and hanging out. And next thing you know, we see him running down the parking lot. He's got lasso in hand. Lasso's a duck.
In the parking lot.
Yep. Back in that day, it's probably still the case. They had to have a cop on Western Boulevard to direct traffic.
Sure.
So they had some words with Olin Hannum for lasso and a duck in the Bojangles parking lot. So he got done on and off the field. Olin Hannum's a stud.
I don't know how we don't end on that, but you've stayed here in the Triangle from Cary, played at State. You've stayed in the Triangle. Let's give a little plug to what you've been up to with the mortgage business.
I've been doing home loans here in the Triangle for many Wolfpack faithful and my family and friends for the last 20 years. Just started my own company a couple of years ago, Lighthouse Lending. So, if you're looking for a mortgage lender, give me a shout.
Get a website. Come on, do this right.
LighthouseLending.com. I'm not used to doing these plugs on the camera, man. I gotta brush up.
Let's get it right, man.
LighthouseLending.com.
Austin, appreciate it. I know you're going to keep up with Wolfpack this season. I'll have to check back in with you when it comes to some of these kicking and punting issues. But you're now officially with my man Mark Pramani, Asti Pramani. You're now in the OG bullpen of kicking specialists.
Appreciate you having me on. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Go Pack.
Play.
The Wolfpack ain't for soft. It ain't for soft people.